Welcome to Unit 9, Notes 1, Inverse Variation Learning Target. I can write and graph inverse variation equations. Good news for you. You need to know how to write the equations too. It's a point on your quiz. So moving on. The number of revolutions of the pedals made when riding a bicycle at a constant speed varies inversely as gear ratios of the bicycle. In other words, as the gear ratio decreases, the revolutions per minute increases. This is why shifting to a later allows you to pedal with less difficulty when riding up a hill. So basically there's a correlation here, and here somehow they vary inversely. As the gear ratio of the bicycle, in other words, as the gear ratio decreases. So you just got to kind of play with these numbers a little bit. Some of them are going to make sense. Basically, if you're dealing with rectangles and you're changing sides, the area is always the same. So y varies inversely as x, and thus there's a non-zero constant such that x times y equals k. So if you got to keep the areas the same, you just keep changing x and y until they have the k that you want. Right? A K is useful when we're doing guess and check things, but for some temperature things, as you'll see in a minute, it makes sense. So let's look at this. The time it takes to travel a certain distance varies inversely as the rate r at which you travel. The equation RT equals 250 can be used to represent a person driving 250 miles. Complete the table and draw a graph of the relation. So this equation RT equals 250. Well, it says right here, R is miles per hour. So that's the rate, and T is the time in hours. So if I plug in 5 for my rate, it'd be 5T equals 250. I divide by 5, and it would take T equal to 50 hours. So then I can write a 50 in here. Or if I know that my rate's going to be 10, times time equals 250, you divide by 10, you're going to get 25 hours. And as you fill this out, you're going to say, okay, this is going to be 15T, it's going to be 250, I'm going to divide by 15 on both sides, and time is going to be approximately 16.6 repeating. Then we'd have 20T equals 250, because 20 is my rate now. Then you divide by 20, you're going to get 12.5. And then like 25T equals 250, you're going to divide by 25. So basically you're just taking 250 and dividing it by the rate. Well, in this case, 250, these would cancel out. This would be 10. 250 divided by 30 would be about 8.3 repeating, 7.14, 6.25, 5.56, and then we're back. 250 divided by 50 is 5. Then we have this thing to graph. And then when we graph it, what we're going to end up with is you are going to have 50 is the rate times 5. So 5 is the rate, it takes 50 hours. Then 10 would be the rate, it'd go to 25, 15, it would be about 16.6, so that'd be just above that line. 20 is about 12.5, so about here. 25 is 10. 30 is 8.3. 40 is 6.25. Oh, 35 is 7.1. 40 is 6.25. Alright, 45 is 5.56. 50 is 5. So this varies inversely. So as R gets really small and goes back towards 0, it goes this way, T grows drastically. But when T gets really small, R gets really big. So you kind of just got to play with the graphs and see, hey, we're going to have all these nice curves when we talk about rate and time, because it's going to have a direct correlation. So you have to make sure you can draw these blue lines with these nice curves. Now looking at that, no matter what values you grab for x and y, when you multiply them, you get 250. So k is your 250. Your constant that they're equal to is 250. So looking at this, graph an inversely equation in which y varies inversely as x when y equals 15 and x equals 6. So last time they gave us the 250. Here they don't. So the first thing you're going to do is x times y equals k. So if x, okay, it says when y equals 15, so 15, x is 6. So that equals k. So 90 is going to equal k. So I got my constant. The second thing I would do is I would pick strategic, or pick x values that are easy to use. So when I see 90, I know the factors of 90. Factors of 90 are 1, because 1 times 90 is 90, 2 times 90 is 45, 3 times is 30, 4 would be, 4 is not a factor of 90 maybe, I don't know, 5, I know 5 is, what else do I got, 9, alright, because then 9 times 10 is 90, 5 times 16 is 90, 3 times 30, 2 times 45, and then 90. So I think those are my estimated factors of 90. I think I did those off the top of my head. Now what I would do with that is pick things that we can graph fairly easily. So I'd probably start with a negative 9. Alright, and then actually in my notes I did negative 6. Negative 3 and negative 2, 0. So when this graph, so there's a 6 in here that we graph, when I look at this graph, we're going to have a positive curve and a negative curve here before I even do anything. So they included some negatives, so I picked some negatives. And then if I pick negative values, I can also pick the positive version of those. So when I do this, we need 90. So we could do this thing with the plug in. So it says third, plug in x values to get y values. And so what they mean is if I'm going to let x equal negative 9, well, x times y has to be 90, so negative 9y has to be 90. When I divide by negative 9, I get y equal to negative 10. So this is going to be negative 10 here. So now instead of dividing the 250 by whatever my x is, really what I'm doing here is I'm going to take 90. Alright, I'll do it in red right here. So I'm going to have x, y equals 90. I'm going to have my x be negative 6, y equals 90. Now we're dividing it by negative 6. Negative 6. Cancel negative 6. 90 divided by negative 6 is 15. So I'm probably going to put, I'll go back to green, negative 15. And then it was negative 3 and negative 30. So negative 3 times negative 30 is a positive 90. So that's how I'm getting those. Negative 2 times a negative 45 is going to be 90. Now there's one other one, and I'm going to show it to you on the bottom here. Is in the middle, I have to start with 0. So if I had xy equal to 90, and I have 0y equal to 90, divide by 0, divide by 0. If you remember, division of 0 is called undefined. So you are going to be in charge of finding values that make it undefined this chapter, or unit. And you have to figure out undefined is every time we're talking about dividing by 0. And we are going to abbreviate that U and D. So when I come up here, when I have 0 here, I'm going to have to write undefined. Now I need a positive 90, so I know that 2 times a positive 45 is 90. Then a positive 30, and a positive 15, and a positive 10. So looking at all of those, I have a positive 90 when I multiply those values together. And that's the point of this. Your K is your constant, and it's 90. So looking at this graph, I'd probably go by tens here. So this would be negative 50, negative 40. This would be negative 20, 0, 20, 40. All right, we're going by tens there. And then this one, you could go by twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Negative 4, negative 8, and you can fill in the middle. I don't have much room. So negative 9, negative 10. Negative 9, negative 10 would be about right here. All right, negative 6 to negative 15. It's going to be in the middle here. Negative 3, negative 30. So negative 30 is on this line. Negative 3 would be about right there. Negative 2, negative 45. All right, so we're looking at this line in black. And so that's how we're going to graph some of these inversely ones. Now, either both of them are negative, which we graphed in the third quadrant, or both of them are positive. So we can graph that in this first quadrant. So we'd have 245, 330, 615, and 9 to 10. All right? And so then we have this. The reason they are in the first and third quadrant is it's positive values. The only way to get positive values is by multiplying positive numbers or multiplying both negatives. If we have a negative K, then we're going to have values that are in the second and fourth quadrant. That's good stuff to know. Okay. Real quick, the reason I picked out these values in this chart for the X, we're strategic. That's step 2. Second step, pick X values that you know the factors for. The first thing you need to know, though, is your K value. So figure out your K so that you can pick out some factors that work with it. And then the third step is plugging it in and making sure, look at this box. Negative 9 times 10 is 90. Negative 6 times 15 is 90. Every one of these is going to be 90 except this 0 in the middle. All right, that's going to be your wild card. That's that undefined. That means, hey, these values don't cross over, all right? So play with this idea of things being inverse variations of each other. So here's an example where we have x when y equals 12 and x equals 4. So usually what I do, the first thing is write down this equation. Then I know, all right, I got to get the K value. Well, X is 4, Y is 12. This equals K. I got 48 equaling to K. So 48 equals K. That's my first step. All right, some people like to write down the second step. Hey, we got to pick out some values I'm going to use. All right, I would use, personally, 2, 4, 6, 8. So remember, I want to start with the negative ones first, so I'd probably write in negative 8, negative 6, negative 4, negative 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Reason B, that if I decide to go by twos, it's really easy to graph. So I kind of want to see what my values are before I decide to go by twos. So I got to plug these in. Well, I know that I need xy equal to 48. So if I put a negative 8 in for x divided by y. Look at this. It still works out. Negative 8 cancels. Divide by negative 8. Y is going to equal negative 6. And then look at that. They're going to be inverse of each other. Now negative 48 divided by that is going to be negative 12. Okay? You should see negative 4 times a negative 12 is a positive 48. Negative 2 times a negative 24 would give me a positive 8. I can write undefined here. 2 times 24 is 48. 4 times 12 is 48. 6 times 8, 8 times 6. So I would suggest, all right, I got to get up to 24. I'm probably going to make this 25 up here and go by 5s. So this would be 10, 0, negative 10, negative 20. Right, and then we just got 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Ooh. So let's graph this. All right, 2 and 24. That's going to be right here. 4 and 12, probably in this area. 6 and 8, 8 and 6, something like this. Then I got to have the negative version. So negative 2 would be down here. Alright, then I go to the next line, would be negative 4, that's negative 12, that's about here. Negative 6 is negative 8. And if I don't end up being a very good math teacher, I'll go into the music business. So you can see, the other thing is, make sure you kind of know that this is that undefined line. Alright? Alright, this is that line that's undefined. You'll start seeing this. Undefined. Right? There's no values that work here because there's a division of 0. So that's how you kind of graph that undefined with a vertical asymptote is the name for that. Now, make sure you can see there's no crossover. This line is never going to cross there. It's going to get really close, but it's never going to touch because division by 0 is not possible. You just need to figure out how to graph these, because there's one on your quiz, and you need to be able to write the inverse equation here, which is our first step here. Figure this out. You can write this. I would say the inverse equation is better known as this right here with the star next to it. Be good with your number sense so you can figure out the factors. Remember, 1 is a number that goes into, 1 in itself is a factor. All right, moving on. So we have this product rule, all right? And in that, it says, hey, you multiply the x and the y, you get k. You multiply the second numbers of x and y, you get k as well. So we might as well just set them equal to each other, which is what this line does. And then if you do some algebra and you start dividing things, you can see that these are flipped around from the 1 and the 2 being flipped on top. So the x1 is here, the y1 is on there. So this is why we say the words inversely proportional. Because a proportion is a ratio where we cross multiply. So that's how they get their name. Right? But now we can do some word problems with this stuff to make things make sense. Meaning, number 4, if y varies inversely as x and y equals 4 when x equals 7. So they're inversely proportional. So what a lot of people do is they write x, y equals x, y because they're lazy. And then they go 4 and 7 are together. So they'll go 4 times 7 equals x times 14. Then they get 28 equals 14x. Divide by 14, divide by 14, 2 equals x. So the value of x is 2 when y equals 14. Now I would mark this wrong on your quiz. You get a point off because you didn't write the equation. The equation should probably be xy equals 28. Now how did I get that? I know xy equals k, and right here I multiplied the 4 and the 7 together. So I know that everything needs to equal 4 times 7, which is 28. So I substitute in the 28. If you look at it, I'll do this one in blue. This 2 is when y is 14. So 2 times 14 is 28. 28 is my correct k value. So I write it as xy equals 28. So then number 5. I'll make this one a little bit bigger too. If y varies inversely as if y varies inversely as x, when y equals 4, when x is negative 8. So you'll see a lot of people write this xy equals xy. They'll do negative 8 times the 4 equals negative 4 times y. Here we'll get negative 32 equals negative 4y. We'll divide by the negative 4. This goes to 1. Divide by the negative 4. 8 equals y. Now when we have that, Excuse me. Now, when we have that, the thing else we need is our inverse equation, and I'm thinking negative 32. Right? You got negative 8 times 4 right here where the star is. Alright, sorry. So now let's do some application problems. So this is how it actually relates to real life. Earth science, as the temperature increases, the level of water in a river decreases. So decreases, increases. That tells you that they have an inverse relationship. Now, when the temperature is 90, the water level is 11. So temperature and water level is going to equal temperature times water level. So we could figure this out. So 110, what was the water level of the river? So what I would do is the first temperature was 90 degrees. The water level was 11 feet, equals second temperature is 110 degrees. The water level was our variable. Now we want to write an equation to show it. What I probably would have done is 90 times 11 in my calculator. If they want the equation, it's going to be 990. So that's the inverse relationship. However, you could do this. You could get 990 equals 110 degrees times water level. You divide by that 110, divide by that 110, and 9 feet is going to equal the water level of the river when the temperature is 110 degrees. That is a very common problem when it comes to inverse relationship. Then the last one would be physical science. When two people are balancing on a seesaw, their distance from the center of the seesaw, which is called the fulcrum point, right, are inversely proportional to their weight. If a 118-pound person, I just want to draw figures, this is the distance, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what you want to do is 118 pounds times the 1.8 is equal to the 125 125 pounds, and then we want to know the other distance. So great news, 118 times 1.8 is 212.4, is equal to 125x. Divide by that 125 to get to 1x. Divide by 125. You find out that 1.7 meters is equal to x. Remember, x times y, we still want to write as 212.4 if it tells us to write the equation. Okay, sorry for coughing a little bit in this video. Hopefully it turns out and it's not too annoying. I'll be the judge of that before I upload it. Thanks for listening. Have a good day, and see you later before I cough again.